What's up, Smite fans? Wraithyn here with another quick how-to guide for beginners from my favorite god, Thor, who as of July 27, 2019 is the #1 jungler in Smite. So sit back, relax, and let's make you a better Thor. All right, guys, first up, let's get into the abilities. We're going to talk about the passive first. Thor gains physical power for each god within 30 units of him. This is an extremely broken passive. It gives him a ton of power when he dives in team fights and is all around, you know, a core element of his kit. And it also allows you to build him a little more bruisery without sacrificing power. I think, you know, with a lot of other assassins, when you buy a mantle or something else, you're giving up that damage item slot. It doesn't matter with Thor because he gets 30 power. You can see this on his passive indicator in the bottom left. As soon as he gets near 3 people, it lights up, gives you the extra power, and you're good to go. All right. Now, on to his first ability. Almost everybody's familiar with Thor's skip, but we're just going to talk about how best to use them. The first thing, the one projectile and a teleport all in one. Basically, you throw the hammer, and it comes back to you. And if you throw the hammer and then tap it again, you can teleport. One of the best ways to use this ability, especially if you don't have your stun or your spin up, is to throw and then try and tap it as soon as you see the numbers come off the enemy, that you've hit the double tap, so you can get in an auto attack or use a different ability, right? So we want to go like this. Boom. That's how you get off all the damage there. All right. His 2 is just a stun, but it's also a projectile wall. If somebody's running, you want to lock them off from their tower. That's how you lock them off. Pretty simple stuff. Straight line ability. It's used in conjunction with the 1 to hit the things called double taps. So if I'm going to stun here, throw my 1. Oh. And then you guys get the idea. But basically, the Thor's abilities combo together very, very well. And using the 1, 2, and 3 appropriately and together is super impactful. Again, as you level it up, you get more stun lifetime out of it from 1 second all the way up to 1.6. That is a friggin' eternity. His 2 stun will actually last longer than his ult stun at max rank. And the cooldown of it goes down as well. So, all right. So on to these cooldowns are messed up because I'm in jungle practice. On to Berserker Barrage, his 3. It's basically a spinning AoE attack, right? If you're just standing here. It does 2 spins and then a 3rd cleave in front of him. So if you look, I spin twice and then I swipe in front of myself. Basically what this means is that if I'm in a big AoE area like this, right, and I spin, I hit the bots behind me twice and the bot in front of me 3 times. So this is especially important if you're going to kind of, you know, use the combo abilities together, where if I stun, double tap, auto, 3, auto, right? Basically, I want to make sure whatever I'm attacking is in front of me by 180 degrees. And again, I'll do it again, but when you marry these abilities together, it's I'm rolling up on somebody in the mid lane, he's running away, stun, double tap, auto, 3, and that's just a ton of damage that you get off. All right, quick tip and trick with the Thor double taps and everything else is getting in something called auto attack canceling, or weaving your autos. This is actually a common thing in some MMOs, but basically, instead of just spamming my abilities, I want to actually get an auto attack off in between each of my abilities that I'm going to throw, or after each ability that I'm going to throw. So I throw it out, teleport, auto, right? So that's another, I'm buffed up. Obviously, these bots have no protection, but it's another 800 damage, which is a whole bunch that I'm using on this Odin bot just because I've woven an auto attack in there. It doesn't take any more time if I do it without it. I'm actually so used to it, I can't not do it, but it doesn't take a whole lot of time. And as soon as you see the numbers pop up for the auto attack, you want to use your second ability. So 1, 2, right? Just like that. Get good at that. I spent a whole bunch of time in jungle practice working on that to make sure I was good. But let's talk about the ultimate for a second. So the ultimate, everybody knows, Thor's greatest ability, up in the air, semi-global ult. How this combos together with everything else that you're doing is we're going to use that same combo ability we used earlier. Boom. Now, the thing about Thor's ult is that now, with every god that you attack, or every piece of damage that you do, whether it's autos, whether it's spins, whether it's a hammer, you're going to send lightning around you in a radius. This is going to chain off of every single enemy that you hit and can do a whole bunch of damage. So you can see just off of one enemy, the arc damage is going to be 110, which is a whole lot when you consider I'm using... When I land, I'll use an auto, my 1, another auto, my 2, another auto, my 3, right? And then an auto afterwards. So between all of that, you can get like an extra 600 damage out of the arc damage, which is super impactful. All right. That's it for the abilities. Let's talk about some tips and tricks. All right, guys. Next up is just some tips and tricks to help you guys get a little bit more comfortable with Thor. Again, most of these are just going to come down to practice, right? Just being able to hit your double tap reliably is something that comes with time, and sitting in jungle practice or just playing Thor in general is going to be super, super helpful. Again, we talked about it a little bit earlier with the abilities, but really you want to be comboing your 1 and your 2 as much as you can. The ability leveling order is max your 1, then your 3, then put 2 points into the 2, and then max your 4. That's how I do it. The reason I put 2 points into the 2 is because that's all you need to confirm a double tap. So here I am at level 13. You'll notice that when I stun and then go for a double tap, there's not enough stun duration for me to successfully double tap without them being able to move or Aegis or anything else, right? So go like this. You can see the stun comes off before the second hit of the hammer. But when I level it up another time and do the same thing, we're going to use a different Odin bot because that one now has DR on it. But if I do the same thing with 2 points in, you see how the stun doesn't come off in time? So all you really need to do to confirm your double tap is level 2 points into the 2. The ult damage that you get from leveling it up, especially the arc damage, is super impactful now that the change to his ult has been made. And so we're going to want to put as many points into the ult as we can after we reach this level 13 state where we have 2 points into the 2. That's a tip and trick that not a lot of people utilize. Some people value the stun more consistently. I like the ult damage, especially if you're building a lot of cooldown. You want to be landing on people's heads and bopping them right when you come down. All right, the next tip and or trick is the Thor combo, right? This is what you're going to be using to gank lanes. This is what you're going to be using to engage in team fights. This is the bread and butter of Thor. And there's 2 versions of it. There's one where you're diving into certain death, and then there's one where you're just picking off an enemy who's either running away or isolated by themselves. But here we go. The first one we're going to do is the one where they're isolated. I go up into the air. I pick my target. They're not going to be standing still, but basically you're going to come down. Auto 1, auto 2, auto 3, auto. And by the end of that, pretty much anybody that you attack should be completely friggin' dead. The important thing there is getting the auto attacks in between your abilities, right? You can get another, I don't know, like 30% damage out if you get good at that. Even more if you have Hydras. All right, guys. Second tip and or trick is diving into team fights. A lot of people just learn that single target combo that we just did, and they leave it there. And when they dive team fights, they go all in, and they end up getting killed themselves because they use their escape in an effort to do as much damage as they possibly can. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to dive in. I'm going to try and get as much AoE damage off as I can. I'm going to still pick my single target, but I'm going to teleport out with my hammer after I get my damage off with my 3. So we're going to dive in, auto 3, and then I'm out of there. First thing we're going to talk about is how to start Thor's build. We're going to do Assassin's Blessing Tier 1 Mace. It's got 15 physical power on it. It's a fantastic starter item and really good. And we're going to go into a healing. First, I almost always get beads every single time just because getting CC'd is a death sentence for Thor. And then after we get a healing potion, we're going to make a decision. We're either going to get a multi-potion or we're going to get a mana potion. Multi-potion means fight. Mana potion means farm, right? So if I am up against an Isis Ratatasker, I really don't want to fight them in the early game. So you kind of have to evaluate, does my mid laner and I have strengths and weaknesses, synergies, anything like that we can make use of? If so, we're going to get the multi-potion. If not, I'm going to get the mana potion. And I'm going to prioritize farming. I may poke a little bit with my 1, but I'm really not looking to fight here. Okay? Now, we're going to go on into the builds. I'm just going to start with a pre-built build, assuming we've already sold Assassin's Blessing. And we'll show you what to trade out for boots. But all of these are completely situational. One of the nice things about Thor, because of his passive, is all the different ways that you can build him. He can go full damage. He can be a bruiser. He can be super tanky. Whatever the team needs, you can flex Thor and still have a ton of power and do a bunch of damage because of the way his abilities work. And also the additional power that his passive gives you. So we'll get right into those here in a second. All right, the first build, which is the only one anybody ever wants to run, is the all-out damage build. Basically, what's going to happen here is we're going to go for some early cooldown, and then we're going to finish out with as much power and pen as we could pack into the build. And this is kind of, if you're just going out to have fun or play an arena or do anything else, you can build this build. You'll get a ton of damage off. You're probably going to die a lot, but that's okay. First thing we're going to do is we finish our boots. Warrior Tabby. I do not like Talaria boots on Thor. I feel like he doesn't need it. He's got enough mobility without it. I finished Jotun's Wrath first. This is kind of a contentious issue here. A lot of people like to go Crusher first. But the way I look at Jotun's is an extra gank, right? If you can get off your ult that much more often, every time you ult, you should be getting a kill because you should be ulting somebody without beads who's vulnerable or out of position and or forcing some objective off of it. So the more often you can do that, the better, especially in the early game, because it's going to lead to something called a snowball, which is you just kind of gain levels and experience and damage out of control while everybody else leaves you in the dust, right? So I love Jotun's first. A lot of people disagree with me on that. A lot of people don't prioritize cooldown. But personally, and especially when you're learning, this is also a lot less punishing because if you miss any abilities, they're up very quickly. Also, it has 150 mana on it, which means that, Thor, if you're spamming his abilities on camps or trying to poke, you're going to have a bigger mana pool to do that with. It's a couple abilities worth right there. Second, really third, after Boots and Jotun's, I like Transcendence for a couple of reasons. One, the MP5 on it is insane. The mana is awesome. The cooldown reduction is even more impactful. We're getting more and more ultimates off. And then the physical power that you get when you fully stack this thing is insane. I don't know what the exact conversion is. It depends on what level you are and whatnot, but this gives you a ton of power. It's regarded as one of the best ability-based god power items. It does take a little bit to stack, but that's okay. You pretty much have the entire game to do it. It's only 50 stacks, so if you think about it, it takes about as long as your Assassin's Blessing would have. Moving on to the Crusher, this thing is another beast of an item. Gives you pen, gives you an awesome passive where it does extra damage over time after you hit people with abilities, right? And since we're using a couple of those when we ult people, between the ult, the 1, and the 3, the extra damage from the Crusher is going to be impactful. Gives you physical power, 15 pen, and attack speed, right? So we're getting more auto attacks off after we finished our combos. And it's an all-around great item for, again, ability-based characters. Shifter Shield. Shifter Shield, I feel like is, I don't know that it's back in the meta. Lasber runs it a lot. It gives you prots and power. When you're over 75% health, you get 70 power, which is an unbelievable amount. While under 75 health, you get additional magical protections, 50 of each. So it's better than like a spirit robe minus the passive, right? So for an assassin who's kind of diving or getting kills, it's great because when you're under 75%, you're getting those prots. When you're over 75%, you're super damage focused. So when you land on somebody's head, you got 70 power and you're just cranking out the damage. It's awesome. It's a great item. I'm becoming more of a believer of it now, especially after chatting with Lasbra. This is a really good item on Thor, in my opinion. Lastly, Titan's Bane. In a lot of these team fights, you're also going to be wanting to land on top of the tanks. The reason for that is that when you land on a tank after your ultimate, they can't peel for their carries, right? If you get both of them standing on top of each other, they can't peel for you. If I land on a Geb and a Ho Yi, the Geb can't Geb shield the Ho Yi because he's stunned as well. So I can get maximum damage off on the Ho Yi. The Geb can't interrupt me. So I like to build the Titan's Bane because that means when I'm landing and I'm doing all that AoE damage, I'm also having an impact on the tanks as well, and I'm doing damage to them. If I were going to sell boots here and get a speed pot, you bet I'm going to go for the Blood Forge because that's what gives you the most power possible. It's like 386 power. It's insane. Oh, wait. No, is it 316? I can't remember. One of these two numbers. Anyway, this is pretty much the max power build you can get on Thor. I'm sure there's other ways to get more power than this, but this is pretty much the most common one. If you just want to go all out damage, you'll pretty much full health somebody with your double tap. So if you just even sit behind the walls and chuck out your hammer during team fights, this will be impactful for you. The next build we're going to talk about is the Dive and Survive build. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Boots Jotuns, and then we're going to move into a Void Shield. Same reason as before for these two items. Jotuns, we want the CDR and all the goodies that it brings. Then we're going to go into the Void Shield. Gives you some physical protection so you can outbox the enemy jungler. Gives you 150 health, which is super impactful in the early game. Gives you 20 physical power, and it also reduces the physical protection of everybody around you by 20. What does this mean? It means when I dive in the middle of a team fight, Everybody around me is going to take more damage from physical sources, whether that's my soul laner, my ADC, or my mid, or what have you, or me. This is basically just as good as having pen. Instead of reducing their protections with pen, you're going to eliminate their protections with the aura. Awesome item here. It's a little bit expensive, but that's why it's kind of a core crutch item in the middle of the build here. Next, we have Onculae. 40 physical power, 50 magical protections, 10% cooldown reduction, and an amazing passive. Onculae is 2150 gold. It is cheap. It is cheap magical protections and cooldown. And this passive, where if you dive onto a mage or a guardian or anybody, this thing is going to proc. It's going to silence everybody around you, including people who didn't hit you. And so when you're diving into the middle of a team fight and a guardian turns to peel or knock you up or do anything, this is going to proc and silence everybody around you so nobody can turn on you. It's going to allow you to get your damage off and then get the hell out of there. Shifters, another great item. When you dive in off that initial burst, when you first land your ultimate, Shifters is going to have a ton of power. It's going to be, it's 70 power when you first land. You're probably going to take a little bit of damage. You'll be around 50% health by the time you have an opportunity to get out. It'll give you those extra prots so you can get away, and you're off. The third thing, or the last thing, is Titan's Bane. 30 physical power, but the passive on this, where it reduces, it shreds protections up to 40%. So when you hit tanks, it's a good tank shred item. Again, because you're diving the entire team, we want that damage to get off on everybody around you. We don't just want to dive into a team fight and AoE or use our abilities and have it only impact the carries. We want to do damage to the tanks as well, since we're stunning them. So that's why we get the Titan's Bane last. You can probably go a couple of different things here. My recommended would be a Mantle of Discord. This gives you max CDR, so 40% CDR. So after you've dove and gotten out, you have max CDR in all your abilities. You can do things like get back in and throw out a couple more stuns, a couple more double taps. You can teleport into some more fights, and it's just going to up your survivability and increase the amount of impact you're going to have on really long engagements, right? So if you feel like your fights are lasting a little bit longer, right? It's not just, everybody uses their abilities once and they're over. Mantle's a good pickup because you can get in, you get out, and then you can get back in again once your abilities come off rotation. If you're really far ahead, you can put a Blood Forge here. If you're getting CC'd, you can go Magi's Cloak. Lots of variability for that last slot. It's just going to depend on what you run into. All right, the last build that we're going to go through is kind of the ultra tanky, super more tanky hybrid build. It's pretty much the maximum amount of tank that I would pack into a build. It has very little cooldown, so you're not going to be able to use those abilities as much. Really, the idea here is that you're diving into the middle of team fights. You're getting off as much damage in CC as you possibly can. And then you're going to want to soak up as much damage from the enemy team as you possibly can, so that damage is not directed back on your team. All right, so we're going to start boots. We're going to go into Crusher. Crusher here is important. One, because it'll help your clear speed early. It'll help your clear speed as you build tanky. Because Crusher's passive gives you extra damage. You have better attack speed, and it's got decent physical power and pen. It's just a good all-around first item when you really don't care about cooldown. I would go Crusher over Jotun's any situation where you don't really mind how long your cooldowns are. Again, we're going to go into the Void Shield Onculae just for the prot reduction and the dive disruption when you get in. And then the last items, we're going to go with Mantle of Discord. We want to be kind of tanky here. And then the Titan's Bane, so we're still doing damage. This build in its current state gives you 162 physical and 152 magical protections, which is sizable. It means that anybody who doesn't have percent pen is not going to be doing any damage to you. So if the tanks turn on you, or the enemy jungler doesn't have a Titan's Bane or anything like that, they're not going to be able to do damage to you. The only thing you have to worry about are the mages and the ADCs. And if you're just kind of landing on top of everybody, it doesn't matter too much. And then I would replace here the boots. Oh, it's not working. With a Spirit Robe. So by the time you're all done here, you've got 30% CDR, 200, just about 200 of each prot. And, the whole idea here is that we just want to dive in. We want to disrupt. We want to soak up as much damage as we can. We want to get our CC off. This is kind of a high survivability build. I don't really run this too often unless I have a really good team around me that I know is going to follow up off of my damage in CC. But again, it's kind of another one of those builds where if you feel like you got to be tanky, this is how you get tanky. All right, guys, that's it for my favorite god, Thor. Hopefully this video was helpful and you learned a bit about how to play him at a highly efficient level. Get good at those double taps. Let me know how it goes in the comment section. Are you getting any better? Are these videos helpful? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. See you on the next one.